Have you ever found yourself scrolling through your phone for hours, consuming endless streams of content, only to realize you can't remember a single meaningful thing you absorbed? Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that despite having access to more information than any generation in human history, we're collectively becoming less capable of deep thought, genuine understanding, and meaningful discourse. Picture a world where the very tools designed to elevate human consciousness are systematically rewiring our brains for distraction, superficiality, and intellectual dependency. This isn't science fiction. This is our reality. And the most disturbing part? Most people don't even realize it's happening. Think about the last conversation you had that truly challenged your thinking. When did you last encounter an idea so profound it kept you awake at night, wrestling with its implications? Compare that to how many celebrity gossip stories, viral memes, or sensational headlines you encountered just today. The contrast is startling, and it reveals something deeply troubling about the direction our society is heading. We're living through what might be the greatest paradox in human history. Never before have we had such unprecedented access to knowledge, yet never before have we seemed so collectively incapable of using that knowledge wisely. It's as if we've built the most magnificent library humanity has ever imagined, filled it with every book, every discovery, every piece of wisdom accumulated across millennia, and then trained ourselves to run through it as quickly as possible, grabbing random pages without ever stopping to read or comprehend what we're holding. But here's what makes this phenomenon so insidious. It's not accidental. The dumbing down of society isn't just an unfortunate side effect of technological progress. It's a carefully orchestrated process that serves specific interests, and understanding this truth is the key to breaking free from its grip. Consider how your attention is captured and manipulated every single day. You wake up and immediately reach for your phone, where algorithms designed by some of the smartest people on the planet have curated a perfectly addictive stream of content. Each notification, each red dot, each endless scroll is engineered to hijack your brain's reward system. These platforms don't want you to think deeply about what you're consuming. They want you to consume quickly and move on to the next piece of content, because depth is the enemy of engagement metrics. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about this over a century ago when he spoke of the last man, a future human being who would avoid all depth, live solely for comfort, and shun anything that demands genuine thought or effort. Does this description not perfectly capture what we see around us today? A society obsessed with convenience, entertainment, and the path of least resistance. Neil Postman, in his prophetic work Amusing Ourselves to Death, foresaw exactly this moment. He predicted a culture where entertainment would become the lens through which all reality is filtered, where even the most serious matters would be reduced to spectacles designed to capture attention for fleeting seconds. He understood that when a society becomes addicted to amusement, it loses its capacity for the kind of serious discourse that democracy and human flourishing require. The psychological mechanisms behind this transformation are fascinating and terrifying. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, identified two modes of thinking: System 1, which is fast, automatic, and emotional, and System 2, which is slow, deliberate, and rational. Modern society has been systematically designed to exploit System 1 while atrophying System 2. We re-bombarded with stimuli that trigger immediate emotional responses while being given fewer and fewer opportunities to engage in the kind of slow, careful thinking that leads to wisdom. This isn't happening by accident. Social media platforms, news organizations, and advertising agencies all understand that emotional reactions drive engagement far more effectively than rational discourse. Fear, outrage, and tribal identification spread faster than nuanced analysis or thoughtful reflection. The result is a public sphere dominated by what essentially amounts to intellectual junk food, content that provides an immediate hit of satisfaction but leaves us malnourished in terms of real understanding. Think about how information spreads in our current environment. A complex geopolitical situation, it's reduced to a meme. A nuanced scientific study becomes a misleading headline. A centuries-old philosophical question is answered in a 30-second video clip. We're not just consuming information more quickly. We're training ourselves to be satisfied with increasingly shallow levels of understanding. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology conducted a groundbreaking study that revealed false news travels 6 times faster on social media than verified facts. But why? The answer reveals something profound about human psychology and modern information systems. False information is often more emotionally compelling, more dramatic, and more aligned with our existing biases than complex truths. In a system that rewards rapid sharing and emotional engagement, lies have a systematic advantage over facts. This creates what we might call an attention economy, where truth and falsehood compete, not on the basis of accuracy, but on the basis of their ability to capture and hold human attention. And in this economy, complexity is a liability. Nuance is a weakness. Thoughtfulness is a competitive disadvantage. But the implications extend far beyond individual consumption of information. When entire populations lose the capacity for critical thinking, they become vulnerable to manipulation on a scale that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. Consider how easily misinformation campaigns can now sway public opinion, how political discourse has devolved into tribal warfare, how evidence-based policymaking has been replaced by governance by soundbite and social media trend. We are re-witnessing the emergence of what some scholars call post-truth society, not because truth no longer exists, but because the mechanisms we once relied upon to distinguish truth from falsehood have been systematically undermined. When people are conditioned to make judgments based on immediate emotional reactions rather than careful analysis, the entire foundation of rational discourse begins to crumble. The educational system, which should serve as a bulwark against this trend, has in many ways become complicit in it. Increasingly, schools focus on standardized testing and rote memorization rather than critical thinking and creativity. Students are trained to provide quick answers rather than to ask profound questions. They learn to perform on tests rather than to think independently. John Dewey's vision of education as a process of discovery and growth has been replaced by education as a factory for producing compliant workers and consumers. Carl Jung understood that true wisdom comes from confronting contradictions, embracing complexity, and navigating the tension between opposing forces. But our current culture has no patience for such depth. We prefer certainty, even when it's false, to complexity that demands effort. We would rather have simple answers that make us feel good than difficult truths that challenge us to grow. This preference for simplicity over complexity has been weaponized by those who understand how to exploit it. Politicians offer easy solutions to complex problems. Advertisers promise that happiness can be purchased. Media organizations reduce intricate global issues to binary choices between good and evil. The result is not just a dumbing down of public discourse, but an erosion of our collective capacity to deal with the genuinely complex challenges facing humanity. Perhaps most troubling is the loss of what we might call cultural memory. Previous generations preserved wisdom through stories, traditions, and texts that spanned centuries. Today, we're drowning in information that disappears as quickly as it arrives. What was trending yesterday is forgotten tomorrow. The profound insights of history are buried beneath an avalanche of temporary content. We recreating a society with perfect recall of the immediate past and complete amnesia about everything that came before. George Santayana is warning that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, takes on new urgency in an age where the past is being systematically erased by the constant churn of new content. How can we learn from history if we can't even remember what happened last year? Yet within this seemingly hopeless situation lies an extraordinary opportunity. If stupidity is being manufactured through specific mechanisms, then intelligence can be reclaimed by understanding and resisting those mechanisms. If our attention is being systematically hijacked, then we can learn to protect and direct it consciously. If we're being trained to think shallowly, we can choose to cultivate depth. The question is, are you ready to make that choice? Are you prepared to swim against the current of a culture designed to keep you distracted, divided, and intellectually dependent? Because what I'm about to reveal will show you not just how deep this manipulation goes, but exactly how you can break free from it and reclaim the full power of your mind in a world that profits from your mental captivity. The uncomfortable truth is that society's descent into stupidity serves very specific interests. And once you understand who benefits from keeping people distracted and intellectually weakened, everything about our current moment begins to make terrifying sense. When people are absorbed in trivial distractions, they have little energy left for questioning authority or demanding accountability from their leaders. When citizens are more invested in celebrity drama than in understanding how their government actually functions, democracy itself becomes a hollow shell maintained for appearance while real power operates in the shadows. This isn't conspiracy thinking. It's the logical outcome of a system that has discovered distraction to be more effective than oppression for maintaining control. The Roman satirist Juvenal described this phenomenon 2,000 years ago with the phrase bread and circuses. He observed that people could be kept compliant as long as they were fed and entertained, allowing corruption and decay to flourish while the population remained blissfully unaware. Does this not perfectly describe our current situation, where endless streams of entertainment keep us docile, while unprecedented concentrations of wealth and power reshape the world according to the interests of a tiny elite? Michel Foucault, the French philosopher, argued that the most sophisticated forms of power operate not through force, but through the subtle manipulation of how people think and behave. In our era, the control of attention has become perhaps the most effective form of social control ever devised. Every notification on your phone, every algorithm that decides what appears in your feed, every piece of content designed to provoke an immediate emotional response represents a form of power being exercised over your mind. But let's go deeper. The fragmentation of society into isolated, angry tribes serves power beautifully. When people are divided against each other, they cannot unite against the forces that exploit them all. And what more effective way exists to divide a population than to encourage shallow thinking and emotional reactions? In an environment where outrage spreads faster than understanding, where people form strong opinions based on headlines rather than careful analysis, conflict becomes inevitable. Social media platforms have discovered that controversial content generates more engagement than consensus-building content. Their algorithms are literally designed to amplify division because division keeps people scrolling, clicking, and consuming. The more polarized society becomes, the more profitable these platforms become. They don't want us to understand each other. They want us to be perpetually outraged at each other. Christopher Lasch identified another crucial element in his analysis of modern narcissistic culture. When society becomes fixated on individual image, instant gratification, and personal validation, collective intelligence weakens because people become too absorbed in their own reflection to engage with larger challenges. The pursuit of truth gives way to the pursuit of likes, shares, and followers. Wisdom becomes less valuable than virality. Consider how public figures gain prominence in our current system. Are they rewarded for being thoughtful, nuanced, or wise? Or are they rewarded for being loud, provocative, and sensational? The answer reveals everything about what our culture actually values. When attention becomes the primary currency of power, stupidity literally becomes profitable. Noam Chomsky captured this dynamic perfectly when he observed that propaganda is to democracy what violence is to dictatorship. If you can control what people pay attention to, you can control how they think, what they desire, and what they fear. The easiest way to control attention is to reduce complex realities into simplistic narratives that appeal to emotion rather than reason. But here's what makes this situation so insidious. We not merely passive victims of external manipulation. Every time we choose distraction over depth, every time we prefer certainty over complexity, every time we share content without thinking carefully about its implications, we become complicit in our own intellectual degradation. Society becomes stupid, not only because of corrupt leaders or manipulative corporations, but because individuals surrender their capacity for thought. This is simultaneously the most depressing and the most hopeful aspect of our situation. If we are complicit in creating this problem, then we also have the power to solve it. The forces that weaken society also reveal the path to its renewal. If stupidity spreads through distraction, then intelligence can be reclaimed through focused attention. If manipulation thrives on division, then wisdom can be rebuilt through genuine dialogue. If superficiality dominates culture, then depth can become revolutionary. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In a society engineered to provoke instant reactions, the simple act of pausing, reflecting, and responding thoughtfully becomes an act of defiance. It's also an act of freedom. So how do we begin to reclaim our minds and resist this tide of manufactured stupidity? The first step is developing what we might call meta-awareness, consciousness not just of what you're rethinking, but of how your thinking is being shaped. Every time you consume information, ask yourself, why am I being shown this? What emotional response is it designed to provoke? Who benefits from me believing this narrative? This kind of questioning cuts through manipulation and forces you to engage with reality more authentically. The second step is what Søren Kierkegaard would have called reclaiming silence. In our hyper-connected world, silence has become almost revolutionary. In quiet moments, we can reflect, analyze, and reconnect with our deeper selves. By embracing stillness, we resist the constant pressure to react and rediscover our capacity for genuine thought. This isn't about meditation retreats or monastery escapes. It's about creating small pockets of mental space throughout your day where you can process experience rather than simply consuming it. The third step involves what Socrates would recognize as the practice of relentless questioning. The father of Western philosophy built his entire method on asking questions rather than providing answers. What would happen if we returned to this approach? Instead of rushing to judgment, what if we pause to ask, what evidence supports this belief? What assumptions am I making? How might I be wrong? Such questions pierce through misinformation and force us to engage more honestly with reality. But perhaps the most crucial step is choosing your information diet as carefully as you would choose your food. Just as consuming junk food leads to physical illness, consuming intellectual junk food leads to mental illness. This means deliberately seeking out content that challenges you rather than simply confirming your existing beliefs. It means reading books that require effort rather than skimming feeds designed for easy consumption. It means engaging with ideas that make you uncomfortable rather than staying within your comfort zone. The philosopher Martin Buber wrote about the I-thou relationship, where we encounter others not as objects to be debated or used, but as subjects to be understood. Imagine how society would transform if dialogue returned to this sacred form. Instead of trying to win arguments, we would try to understand perspectives. Instead of proving others wrong, we would seek to discover truth together. This brings us to perhaps the most important insight of all. The renewal of intelligence cannot be a purely individual project. Human beings grow wiser in community, but only when that community is committed to truth rather than tribal victory. We need to create spaces, both online and offline, where genuine dialogue can flourish. We need to support institutions and leaders who prioritize depth over superficiality, accuracy over popularity, long-term thinking over short-term gain. The Renaissance emerged from the so-called Dark Ages, by rediscovering ancient wisdom while pioneering new ways of thinking. Perhaps we stand at a similar threshold. The question is whether enough people will choose the difficult path of intellectual renewal over the easy path of continued distraction. This choice cannot be made once and forgotten. It must be made every day, every hour, every moment when you're tempted to scroll mindlessly instead of reading thoughtfully, to react emotionally instead of responding wisely, to consume passively instead of creating meaningfully. The battle for your mind is not a distant conflict. It's happening right now, in this moment, as you decide what to do with the insights you've just encountered. The future of human intelligence, and perhaps human civilization itself, depends not on the powerful or the famous, but on ordinary individuals who choose to think deeply in a shallow world, to seek truth in a post-truth society, to cultivate wisdom in an age of information overload. The question that remains is simple but profound. Will you be one of them?